meeting of the City of Commission of Huron, South Dakota, April 27th, 2022. Roll call, please.
Mayor Harrington.
Here.
Commissioner Bragg.
Here.
Robish is absent. Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Weinreich.
Here.
Very good. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving on to agenda approval, I'm sure there's not much change in this agenda. David is here to, so need a motion to approve the agenda for tonight.
So moved.
Commissioner Weinrich?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Smith. All those in favor? Roll call vote.
Mayor Harrington.
Aye.
Bragg.
Aye.
Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Weinreich.
Aye.
Okay, moving on. It's approved. Public forum, I'll read this. Public comments may be sent to us during the live meeting broadcast on the city's YouTube channel. This link is listed in the city's website at www.huron.com/citygovernment. In order to use the YouTube chat feature, please create an account with your YouTube and Gmail or use your existing accounts. Please state your name and address for the record. Public forum is limited to a maximum of 3 minutes per person. Moving on, why we're here tonight, presentation of Dakota Avenue Streetscape, preliminary concepts, and Stockwell is here tonight to let us have. David, please welcome aboard.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me here this afternoon. It's not quite as windy out there today, so the drive wasn't too bad coming out. But really appreciate the opportunity to come present to you guys some of the concepts and ideas that we have in regards to the streetscape for Dakota Avenue. So in terms of the steps that we're going through, we've developed some preliminary concepts and some designs that we want to show you guys here this evening. And today is really the first step in getting stakeholder input in terms of you guys, but also the users of the corridor. So we're going to be having a public meeting later on tonight to see what the public thinks in regards to the different ideas that we've brought forward. These ideas are by no means final or they can't change. I mean, we really pride ourselves on developing ideas that are a reflection of the community. And so if we need to change, go back to the drawing board, modify. You don't like any of them, start over. We want at the end of the day for you guys to be really proud and happy of the final design. And so this input is important to us as we go through these different steps. So a majority of the presentation is specifically going to be looking at 5th Street to Market in downtown. Although we are going to also touch on 9th to 5th Street where we're looking at street trees going back in that area. So we have a couple of slides in regards to that, but a majority of the presentation is in relationship to the 5th to Market, which is in the blue on this image here. So that's where we're kind of focusing a lot of the improvements on. But again, we're going to talk on a few different items from 5th to 9th. So just a quick kind of recap and look at the downtown area. You guys are all very intimately knowledgeable of the downtown area, and so I know that these pictures aren't any surprises to you guys. But just to kind of, again, from a public standpoint, this evening to just reorient people. So we're looking at downtown Huron, buildings coming up all the way to the right of way. Giving you that sense of kind of enclosure in your downtown area, shop windows. We know that there's overhangs, there's signs. Downtown is busy, and so the design will need to be accommodating to that. So what we're going to look at here is more of a kind of one block prototype that will be specifically applied from block to block. Whether it's signage that we need to make sure that we're not in front of, or if we have basement protrusions, there'll be different elements in each block that are unique that we're going to have to work around, and we're certainly going to be doing that as a part of the design. And then also the area we're looking at is from 5th to 9th Street. And this area in particular, people really like the tree line drive. And that's probably the biggest, item of contention with a lot of people. And so as a part of this project, we want to help kind of re-tree this corridor. And we're going to be showing where we're starting to preliminarily think about where those trees go. But also, we're going to be looking at, what are the types of trees that are going back. We want to make sure that we have a good, diverse urban forest. We don't want to run into a situation where a lot of South Dakota is in right now with the green ash. It was a variety of tree that was planted very heavily back in the day. And so now with the emerald ash borer, entire corridors, entire parks, large areas that people kind of thought as forested are now not. And so when we come back and replant this corridor, we want to make sure that we're coming back with a variety of different trees. And so here's some examples that we've used successfully within urban environments and within both a streetscape standpoint in the downtown, but also within kind of the more kind of transition area as we transition from your downtown through a residential area to more of your commercial area further south. So we have swamp white oak, honey locust, which is the second image. You guys have a fair amount of honey locust in this corridor already. Although one thing that I'm sure people will be happy to hear is that they've now developed seedless and thornless varieties, so we don't have to worry about the long pods that come with those. Sienna Glen maple is a tree that provides some nice red fall color because a lot of the trees that are hardy and do well in this area typically have a lot of yellow fall color, so we want to introduce some red. And then Triumph elm, there's a variety of different hybrid elms that are Dutch elm disease resistant, native elms, and they are very adaptive, and we've had very, very good luck with a variety of different elm trees that would be installed as well. So those are kind of the 4 different varieties that we're looking at. And where we're putting them, again, we're starting to just conceptually lay this out so we can start to have the conversation with the different property owners along the way. So on the kind of the plan, the left side, so on the west side of Dakota Avenue, the top part of the slide there, there's going to be a widened sidewalk on that side. And so the trees will be placed within kind of closer to the different property owners. So that's an agreement that we're going to need to work out with the different property owners in regards to planting kind of right at that edge of the right of way, just on their property, to start to grow back that urban canopy, so to speak, that comes down Dakota. On the east side, we are doing not quite as wide of a sidewalk, so we're doing more of your typical sidewalk, which allows us to have more space between the edge of the sidewalk and what is the right of way. So there's a little bit more room to work in terms of planting trees on the back side of the sidewalk on the east side. Again, we're going to be upfront and working with the property owners on that, because if a property owner is against it or not going to take care of the tree, then that has its own issue, and so we don't want to obviously plant trees that are set up for failure either. And so we want to have an open dialogue with people as we start to think about where those trees happen along the corridor. And right now, I'd say you've got a tree every 30 feet or so going up and down Dakota Avenue, which is pretty tight spacing, but that also is what gives you that kind of sense of enclosure as you drive down it. So we did these at about, I'd say, probably 40-foot spacing. So we are spacing them out a little bit more, but we can plant a lot more trees, or we can plant a lot less trees. So again, just starting to lay it out to give people a visual on what that could look like, and also let people know that we're not forgetting the fact of the comments that people give in regards to wanting to see that as something in the future. So back when we met in regards to, God, I think it was the end of last year already, we went through a visual preference survey with you guys and then also with the public. And these are the results of that survey. From a monument standpoint, everyone likes the hybrid image, which is kind of utilizing your brick, your cast stone materials, but we don't want to design or make something that looks old, so to speak. So that was by far had the most votes. Everyone liked raised planters when it came to planters. Obviously, those cost a little bit more, but that was what got the most votes, along with tree grates. Seating, people like the idea of seat walls, along with benches as kind of the top two there. Again, with a lot of these, we're going to have a variety of these different elements in each of the different designs, but again, it's good to see what people really rallied around. Paving was pretty close, whether it was colored concrete, pavers, or stamped and colored concrete. That was some pretty close voting there. But again, there's different maintenance that comes with each of these different items, so that's something that we talk about with staff as well, especially when we have an item like this where it's so close. Okay, from a maintenance standpoint, we want to make sure that we're including items that can be maintained long term as well. Lighting, I know you guys have been talking about lighting already, and so we're going with kind of a hybrid, a Bemidji style light. So we've got some we've incorporated that light style into the graphics, and that kind of fits the hybrid role, not going full on decorative like, the acorn lights that you see in a lot of downtowns, but also we're not doing, the Cobra Head DOT lighting. Sorry, Brad. So that you did get a couple of votes though. So somebody out there likes it.
It wasn't me.
And then accent lighting, we do a lot of tree up lighting. It looks beautiful in the evening. That's the one that people really liked as a part of it. And then, what are some other, I'd say the elements we just went through are I don't want to say standard, but something that you'll usually find in a downtown area. So what are some other opportunities that people wanted to see? Wayfinding signage and public art were by far the top two. And so I think I think public art was a big discussion that we had, and so seeing those two at the top makes sense too, in terms of the discussions we had. We also talked about what is it that makes Huron special. When you think of Huron, what is it? Culture was by far, I'd say, probably the most talked about. Culture, diversity, understanding kind of the industrial nature, the railroad, the industry that supports the community. But as we started to also look around, just in familiar with the community and looking at the different pictures, there's some historic architecture. There's some nice elements within the downtown area that we want to tie into from an architectural standpoint. You start to see kind of the intricacies of the brick patterns or the reveals that happen in the different buildings. There's some unique elements that we want to try and capture as a part of some of the designs. So these are the materials that we started to kind of put together as a part of our palette to look at. So we're looking at weathering steel, which kind of ties in with the kind of the economic or the industry heritage there. Utilizing pavers, colored concrete, and then also looking at native landscaping, utilizing more of a prairie style approach, so ornamental grasses, some perennials there, again to tie in with the surrounding landscape. You see an image there of accent uplighting, benches, trash receptacles, bike racks, cast stone benches. So again, starting to kind of put together our kind of palette of materials and products that you're going to see implemented into these different concepts. As I said, public art is something that we talked about quite a bit. So you'll see in these different concepts, locations that we've identified as art locations, whether it's something that could be placed within the landscape or something that has a pedestal to it. As we get more towards the end of the presentation, we're going to we'll show what we have for some ideas of incorporating some unique elements, whether it's with the wayfinding signage or benches, there's different etchings, whether it's tying in with the kind of the ecology of the region or the diversity of the region. There's some ways for us to put in some subtle elements into the design, but also, there's a sculptural element to it, and working with local groups to maybe have a call for art pieces. One that we really like, or I really like, that I think has been kind of unique to see. It's unique to South Dakota. Is the artist that utilizes kind of found objects and makes them into really, I think, unique and beautiful pieces of art that kind of reuse materials from farmsteads. And so, you can see some images there. He's done tigers, buffaloes, horses, but maybe that's something where you have different pheasants made out of this material as you go through Dakota Avenue. So we came up with two different concepts, option A and option B. Not saying that option A is better than option B, but just, we wanted to give two different ideas. And so this first idea, we utilized, more curvilinear forms, tying the design more to the James River. So kind of hearkening back to utilizing the James River that flows through the community and utilizing some of those soft, meandering forms through this design. We've incorporated also a variety of different materials into this one, whether it's colored concrete or pavers. So pavers we would just do along the back of the curb in this area as kind of a good demarcation from pedestrian space to vehicular space, and then utilize that as an accent around some curved planters, some curved benches that happen throughout the streetscape. We're gonna have groupings of trees and we're gonna have a variety of tree spacing. Again, we didn't want to have a design that it was like really patterned out, like, okay, we're gonna have a tree every 50 feet and we're just gonna go down the street, because that doesn't work with signage. And so we didn't want to put forth a design where it was like, okay, we've got that patterned out. It's kind of, changes. Sometimes they're closer, a little bit closer together. Sometimes they're a little bit more spaced apart. And that's by design to really, be a reflection of the adjacent businesses that are next to it. So we've got some cast stone benches incorporated into this area, bike racks, raised kind of movable above ground planters that could be utilized for annuals. And so again, this plan, it's kind of hard to see some of this stuff, and not everyone always understands plans. And so we've got some nice graphics here then that show what some of these elements look like. So this is, again, a prototypical block. This is not, saying that it's, I know like on the plan we label it as, okay, well, fourth is on the left and third's on the right. We're not saying that this is specifically where trees are going or where the planters are gonna be. This is more of, okay, in your downtown, here's what we're looking at. So you see the item number 1 here is a cast in place concrete curb, but then all along kind of what you see from the street side, we're changing that material to be a weathering steel edge. And it's, so that would be I'd say probably about a 1/2 inch. It's got eased edges, so it's not sharp or anything like that. And it is a nice, thick, kind of almost a steel curb that is along the planters along the roadway. Couple reasons for that. It adds kind of an accent element that as you're driving by, you can see that change in material from concrete to the weathering steel. Also, there's a lot of salt that happens, and salt can eat concrete. But a lot of times that steel can hold up over time as long as it gets some good oxidation to it. So that works really well. You see the planter there, which is item number 3. So we got some landscaping within that planter. The pavers, which is item number 4. So the pavers run the whole length along the back of the curb in between the planter and the back of the curb area. That provides a space for someone to be able to get out of their vehicle and kind of walk in between the vehicle and the planter, to get to the business or the sidewalk, the ADA accessible sidewalk, which we have labeled there as number 7. And then number 6, which is in the middle, are some raised planters that have a bench associated with them. But then those planters are opportunities, whether it's, you know, some perennials or for some flowers, or also an annual, that's something that gets changed out with staff on a regular basis. So again, here's another graphic kind of showing the difference of the paver along the back of curb, colored concrete then between kind of the paver and what is considered the ADA accessible sidewalk, which runs along the side of the building there. This planter in the foreground would be a raised cast-in-place planter, or not cast-place, cast stone planter. So that would be at a sittable height, so 18 inches, so someone can sit on it. It then raises up the height of the kind of the steel edging that it faces the street. So again, as we get further on in the presentation, you know, we see that as an opportunity to create some unique artistic elements within the design. You see the bike racks as a little bit kind of further down in the image. We've kind of kept the bike racks on the corners of the design, so that way, whether it's a cross street, you know, it provides kind of a touchdown area for the bikes and then walking into the mid-block areas. Again, an image here of the different elements. You can see the weathering steel in the front. An opportunity, number 5 there, is to have a cast stone bench, but then also have a sittable bench on top of it with arms and a back to it. So again, a unique element that's got, you know, more of a stone-based design with a bench on top. And then here you can see our first iteration of developing a monument that would be at the kind of the edges of downtown. And so this monument here has more of a historic architecture element. So we looked at the different kind of buildings within the downtown Huron area and developed this monument in response to some of the architectural features, whether it's cast stone, you know, the brick changing colors, but then also changing direction based on whether you're highlighting kind of the cast stone in the middle or the edges. So again, a variety of kind of different elements that we've incorporated into this monument that are a reflection of the architecture of the community. And then behind it, you can start to see incorporating some wayfinding opportunities as well. Obviously, you know, we don't want to have one of those giant monuments at each kind of intersection, you know, from a cost standpoint, but also from, you know, we want to use those marquee elements as kind of highlighting the edges of downtown right now. So at the mid-block crossings, or not mid-block crossings, but some of the middle blocks intersections, there's an opportunity for, you know, maybe a little bit smaller monument that has, you know, maybe the street names on it. So this says 4th Street. Or maybe it's something that incorporates, you know, the Huron logo on one side, or, you know, it's a brand new day on one side. You know, there's a variety of different things we can utilize for those cast stone elements, and then having a planter on top of it that can be switched out with annuals. So again, just kind of a graphic looking down on top of the design. So option B, so I can come back to this, I just kind of want to get it through so you guys can all see it before we kind of open it up for discussion. So option B, I'd say it ties in more with the, you know, the industry part of it as well. Not so much the shapes of the James River, but utilized more of a rectilinear approach to the design. We simplified it a little bit. We got rid of the pavers and just did all colored concrete. But then what we did is we utilized stone as an element within the landscape areas. So again, tying in with, the ecological area around Huron, utilizing the field stone. We're not tying this one to the James River, we're tying this one more to the materials that you see in the area. So utilizing that as an accent. Again, a lot of the same other elements, whether it's bike racks, trash receptacles, sculpture locations, what type of monument could look like. But again, it's a different rearrangement of those elements and a different shaping of the different elements. So this is more of a rectilinear approach as opposed to the curvilinear that you just saw. So on this one, you can see the rectangle tree planters, landscape planters. We did away with kind of the steel edging on this one and focused more on utilizing just a concrete curb to help frame the landscape areas. Couple reasons for doing that, whether it's an option A or an option B. First off, it kind of raises the plants up a little bit, not quite to the height of sittable, but raises it up 6 to 8 inches to keep some of the natural salt from going in there when people are putting salt on the sidewalks. But also from a snow removal standpoint, it helps delineate where those planters are as well. With this design too, we would be utilizing cast stone benches for seating opportunities. There you can see kind of utilizing some of the field stone rock as an element, a material change within the landscape. This one doesn't have a tree associated with that, but there are other ones that you would see that has a tree with it. And then kind of in the background, you start to see, sculpture pads that could be incorporated into the design. So there you can see kind of more in the foreground, the sculpture pad location. Again, you can see from a texture standpoint that it's a little simpler, just utilizing the colored concrete as opposed to the colored concrete and the pavers. And so that was part of the reason in terms of why we incorporated some of the field stone as a material change and an architectural element in the landscape to give you a little bit more texture to the design. So there you see opportunity with incorporating a tree into that rock garden area as well.
Or Easter egg hunt.
Yeah, that's true. Yep. So this monument, as you see in the foreground, starts to take the shape of a monument that we've kind of talked about with you guys and shown you guys previously when we were talking specifically about the James River recreation area, but it certainly, I think, is something that applies to the downtown as a way to change those panels out with, images or graphics that reflect Huron. And so again, that provides its own artistic element to the design. Those panels can be changed on a side-by-side basis, block-by-block basis, depending upon maybe the businesses that are there at that location, or what it ties to. 3rd Street goes down to the 3rd Street Dam. Do we want to incorporate an image of a boy fishing or something on that side? So again, different approach, utilizing more of a brick base and metal top that would be illuminated in the evening time. So what you see as white would glow at night. So, and then again, just a different idea on the incorporating some wayfinding signage on the back side of it. We're not putting a lot of detail to kind of what the maps and all that stuff would look like. We got some images of what that could look like here and want to get your guys' feedback on it. Again, an opportunity for one of those mid-block or I guess middle intersection opportunities for a monument, a little bit smaller monument. We didn't want to. I think it's all, we did this on purpose in terms of saying, it's okay to mix and match these designs as well. So I mean, if we like the brickwork, but we like it on a smaller scale, but we still liked kind of more of the metal element. So, we can work with both of those on being elements, whether it's the larger kind of marquee monuments as you enter downtown versus, maybe one of the middle intersection ones where we have the street names on it and an annual planter on the top of it. Again, just kind of another graphic showing kind of as you come up to the intersection what that looks like. Or could look like, I should say. So here you see, some of the monuments that we've already shown you guys that we've been talking about, kind of more of, one that ties with more of the historic architecture on the left-hand side and more of a tying in with the heritage, cultural, the industry elements on the right side with those panels that could be interchangeable. The white is something that would glow in the evening time then. Wayfinding, there's a variety of different ways of doing that. You can put as much or as little information on those as what you guys want to. So we did a couple different, ideas or options for it. On the left side, it's got kind of a unique shape to it in terms of it tapering down at the bottom, but incorporating the logo with more of just kind of a larger map on it. The traditional one in the middle is kind of more like a wind vane. So you have the arrows. So depending upon where that post is, you could have arrows that point to different marquee elements within the community. Whether it's 3rd Street Dam, library, Campbell Park. There's City Hall. You can kind of put those pointing all sorts of different directions to quickly. Okay, I got to go that way for the library, so to speak. Very simple. The top part then, we thought could be, cutouts of a pheasant that would turn with the wind on the top part. And since it's never windy, I don't think it would ever turn. But either that or it might go fly right off. Who knows? But
I think we can get Wall Drug to pay for that.
Right. That's true. Wall Drug. 300 something miles that way. That's the fun thing about it is that, I also see that as, we'll kind of get to that a little bit later, but tying that in with the cultural, diversity aspect of it. So we reached out to the school district and there are 14 different languages spoke in the school district and there's representation from 20 different countries. The lady didn't go so far as to say, well, she's like, I don't have anything to say that we're the most culturally diverse school district. I think that was brought up at the public meeting, is that Huron's the most culturally diverse. She's like, I don't have any way of maybe checking that or supporting that, but at the same time, having a representation of 20 different countries in your school district is pretty remarkable. And so maybe that's something where, you have, to Germany or to China, this is the way you go and here's how many miles it is. So I think that's a fun thing that, I don't know, it's always fun to see whenever you go on vacation too, whether it's Jamaica or Mexico or Florida or wherever it is, it's fun to kind of see those, it's that far to where I need to go home.
Like MASH all those years ago.
Right, yep. And then on the right-hand side, again, simple is just what we called it, but, just kind of tying in with putting the Huron on the top, wayfinding, and then just having a simple map graphic associated with that. And there's a variety of different, options of what could go on those different graphics. And so again, we just wanted to show you guys some examples, whether it's, maps, on the left-hand side, showing, kind of the outline of downtown and the buildings, and where you would need to go to, what we kind of showed as the traditional one, with the arrows pointing in a variety of different directions, or, more of an infographic approach to it. So having different icons, and utilizing more of icons and directions as opposed to maps, in the area. Obviously, these designs also could have, community information location associated with it, whether it's a community announcements or events, a panel that could be, something that also informs the public of different things happening. So tying into, kind of some of the diversity elements, And also some of the unique elements for Huron. Here's some ideas that we had for, incorporating some of these, unique elements into the streetscape. And so whether it's associated with the weathering steel, the curb, the wayfinding signage, the cast stone benches or panels within the different monuments, there's a variety of different ways to say, it's a brand new day in a variety of different languages. So maybe you have that in different languages on the different wayfinding signage or within the curb. If we do a weathering steel curb, there's different ways of saying community, downtown, home. Some of those key words that we heard a lot of when we talked about what do you think of when you think of Huron. And then also from a logo standpoint, whether it's the city logo, developing something unique for Campbell Park, the shape of the James River. I think there's some different ways that we can uniquely tie some of these elements into the downtown area. Again, we started to think about, okay, where do those elements occur? And again, this is just our initial, stab at it, so to speak. I know that we've talked about, Fifth to Market as being the downtown area. But in terms of some of these, say more intense design, or if we're gonna say that image of those two different streetscape options, we want exactly that. I see that probably more happening between Second and Fourth, and then somewhat of a lesser version of that from Fourth to Fifth and from Second to Market. So I think your kind of more intense streetscape elements will be Second to Fourth. And so an entrance monument, again, we want to look at where it makes sense as you're driving in, but also where it would, stand out from a driving standpoint. So, we're looking at, signal poles and where, which corners are the signal poles located, because we don't want to put, a downtown monument right next to a signal pole, because it kind of takes away from it. And so, we strategically placed them where we thought it would make sense for them. That's still, I'd say, to be determined and still certainly up for discussion. But again, something that we started to put together. Costs, because it always comes down to cost. So what we did is we looked at option A, and we backed out. Okay, the DOT is going to do regular concrete. So what is our cost above and beyond doing regular concrete in these areas? So with that total cost in the bottom right is construction cost, includes contingencies. We incorporated, we had some feedback from staff, so we made some changes to that. We did incorporate irrigation into the design as well to help with keeping the plants nicely watered, but it also helps with flushing those plant beds, the salts out of the plant beds in the spring as well. One thing that's not included in that cost is, because we didn't want it to skew one option one way or the other, is it does not include the monument costs. Because if we do a downtown monument, that's going to be only on one end or another end. And so these costs do not include, the downtown monument or wayfinding signage, because again, that may or may not be a part, of a specific block in this area. So all in for this block is approximately $540,000 above and beyond kind of what would be considered a DOT standard concrete roadway. And then option B, a little bit less, obviously, because we don't have the pavers. So not doing pavers helps with that cost. We don't have quite as many, the curvilinearness of the benches, the weathering steel, curb. I'd say option A has some more of those unique elements, but at the same time, unique elements come with a cost. And so that's why you see option B being a little bit more cost effective from a budgeting standpoint.
Does that include lighting in that cost too, or is that still a
It
separate?
includes the uplights, like for the trees, but it does not include,
The street light?
the street lighting updates. Questions, comments? So tonight, just so you guys are aware too, so tonight we're gonna take the costs off of it, because people kind of fixate on that when they make their decisions. I mean, it is an important decision factor, but that's for you guys to make. So tonight, after I go through that presentation, we will have board, just so you guys are aware, so we'll have boards set up that have kind of a collage of these different slides put together. So we'll have one board that has all the option A stuff on it, one board that has all the option B stuff on it, one board for the monuments, and then one board for the trees, just so people can see where those are happening. And then we're gonna be giving everybody dots, 3 dots. And we want them to place a dot on which the concept they like the best. So at the end of the day, we should have a good count in terms of which option they like the best. We'll also have sticky notes and pens so that people can write down comments. We want them to put them on the design so we can kind of catalog it at the meeting, but we will also have comment cards available for people to utilize and fill out if someone was unable to attend, and then email or mail those back to us.
Is there a history element involved anywhere? The history of the city of Huron?
I guess not specifically in terms of like that tells that story. I think the focus in terms of the elements was more of just pulling more of the historic, architecture, and looking at kind of the region from an ecological standpoint. But we did have the 1883, the established date for Huron on there. But in terms of specifically telling the history of Huron, we did not have that as an element. Having said that, that's certainly something we could incorporate, into the wayfinding signage, that element. So maybe one side is a map, the other side has kind of more, maybe has, a graphic of spelling out the history of Huron. And coming up with some of those, more graphical panels is certainly something that we could do.
Because it is, whether it be the railroad, or whether it be the college, or whether it be our packing corp element, has risen this community up
Mhm.
as stuff, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That's something we can incorporate into it.
We
Yep.
could almost element, it's plug into that, our culture too.
Mhm. Yep.
How our culture has changed
Yes.
over the years.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, no, absolutely. That's something that we could incorporate into it.
Here's the history
Yeah.
buff, we should be.
That's good. We'll just have Barry write it.
Yeah, there we go.
How much of the cost, would you say most of the cost difference is because of the concrete versus the pavers? Or?
You talking between option A and option B?
Yeah.
I'd say a lot of that is the pavers, but also there's kind of less cast stone in option B from a planter standpoint. The weathering, and it doesn't include the weathering steel. That weathering steel, we've done that before, and it's more costly to do that than it would be to just do a concrete curb. And so that's why you're seeing some of the, it's not, I wouldn't say it's one specific item. It's just kind of a conglomerate of the differences between the designs.
Yeah, and that's a concern, because I felt like this was a concern after our last meeting. So we're gonna give people 2 options, say put a dot on it. But what if I hate the weathering steel, but I love the curve, and I hate the pavers, but I love where do I put my dot? 'Cause
Right,
it's like,
right.
it's all over the place. And I think we heard a lot of feedback from that on the last meeting too, is people said, I was supposed to pick A, B, or C. I didn't really like any of them, so I just picked one. Well, then we
Right.
get a result back and say, this was the top vote getter. Well, it's
Right.
kind of a toss-up, so I know you said you'll have the Post-it notes for
Yes.
feedback
Yep.
too, but
Yep.
but that would be my only concern with throwing 2 options and saying, which do you like better, A or B? there's gonna be elements of both people. Like.
Right, right. And that's why, it, obviously depending on how many people show up, it takes, a group effort to kind of hear what everyone's talking about and discern that. That's why, I'll be giving the presentation and kind of going around, but I mean, Anthony's gonna be there talking to different people at the different stations. We always like, whether it's Barry, Brett, Chad, Brad, be able to kind of help hear, what they're hearing. I'd say, just one thing that, people have a hard time sometimes like writing down their thoughts, or they'll sit there and verbally tell you everything, but then they won't write any of it down. So a lot of times what I'll do is as someone's talking to me, I'll write their comments down and put it down for them because they have a hard time doing that. And so, it'll be a collective effort tonight to kind of gather as much information as we can from everybody that comes. Because you're right, we're not gonna just go in and be like, oh, well, option B got 50 dots and option A got, 15 dots. So, all right, we're going with option B. That's it. If we wanna know, are there elements of option A that you like? Okay, let's see if we can incorporate them into option B or vice versa. The dots help in terms of trying to get people to narrow it down because, you may say, well, I like the pavers of one and this of the other, but the next person may be like, well, you may both agree you like option B with tweaks, but, we're not gonna make everybody happy either. So I guess the curse and the blessing of the dots is at least we'll know generally which way people are leaning, but it's still going to be, a good effort to kind of write down everybody's thoughts and comments.
I have a question maybe more for city staff on the current downtown with garbage cans, benches, certain areas raised pavers for that matter. What's the downside of those? Snow removal? Is it repair? Is it?
Getting to them to dump them.
I'm sorry?
Getting to them to dump them. We have to go down there, specifically early in the morning setup. That's the only downside that I can see that isn't even really an issue. They always
Dumping
go
the
down
trash
there.
cans?
What's that?
Dumping the trash cans, Jeff?
Yeah. Mhm. So, Dale's been looking at other, had looked at some options like at Mitchell, where they have more, where they can pick them up with their arm and things like that. But it's just, after about 7 o'clock in the morning, it's, all, the parking is full all the way up and down both sides, so it's difficult to get in there that's why like our staff, we water early in the morning before all the cars start showing up at the businesses along there. Other than that, the wind has taken out a lot of those, the lids. We got all the stainless steel lids and it's hard to keep them lashed on our old concrete ones. So we've eliminated some of those planters just because we can't get lids for them, or we've had to weld different brackets on them. So it'd just be finding a good garbage can, that's not only aesthetically appealing, but that can also withstand the elements, and then getting to them to dump them. Which, David, I'm sure is an issue that you have.
Yeah, maintenance in terms of getting to them. I know we like to try and keep them away from the mid-block area, try and keep them at the corners.
Yep.
So that way, whether you're parking on Dakota or Second, you can try and, maybe stay off Dakota and still get access to them.
Yep.
From a trash receptacle standpoint, we would do, benches, trash receptacles, recycling, everything would be bolted down, so we wouldn't have any issue with it blowing away. The benches, the bike racks would be bolt down or either cast into the concrete. So, I think there's certainly ways of accommodating whatever it is. That's a unique challenge to you guys. We want to make sure we accommodate that in the design as best we can.
The snow removal with the private contractors that come in with bobcats do a lot of damage to what's downtown too, so. That would be my concern, how fancy stuff you put down there, what are those guys gonna do to that stuff that's downtown?
I mean, that was part of the reason why we did a cast stone bench base, as opposed to just a bench with, the legs on it. It gives it a little bit more, beef to it. I know that in a lot of communities, that community thinks it's the only community that gets snow. So it's certainly a challenge and a comment we get on a lot of different projects. But, in the end, the kind of the beautification and the aesthetics, I think it's the classic, like, if it's not something that you're really prideful of, or if it's not saying it's a junky down, I mean, if it's a junky car, you really don't take great care of it. But all of a sudden you get a brand new car and you're like, oh man, like I don't wanna get a scratch on this thing. And so I think, people will take more pride in the design or the streetscape, take better care of it. I do know that in other communities, the city has recognized the fact that, there is more stuff to work around. It's not a blow and go, type design anymore. So and I don't wanna say that this is what city staff should do, but the city has said, okay, well, we'll do, a broom to get the sidewalk cleared off. We'll get we'll do the snow removal ourselves. So, it's kinda depends upon, and maybe it's, okay, we're gonna do it in just these specific 2 blocks because it has the most intense stuff. And so we'll do snow removal on these 2 blocks, but that's just because, of reason X, Y, Z, but, so again, it kinda, it depends.
I know there was watering issues to the planters.
Yep.
Been some issues with lighting, but we also gotta remember what's out there. I think it was put out in the early 70s. I mean, we're talking 50 years old. That stuff has been out there. It's still not too bad a shape for what's out there too, so.
Yep.
On the snow removal too, I think that's something that as a city, we really need to discuss, because anything we do for streetscape at all is gonna present a challenge. I mean, the easiest way, I mean, if you wanna know Red Wilk's opinion, is probably put nothing out there so that he can just come in with the skid steer.
Money and time.
Yep,
He wants to
yep,
go
and
100
go
miles an
on
hour,
through
because
it.
he's
So-
gotta go to the next one.
Right, so anything we do is gonna have an element, I think, of challenge there, that, so I think as a city, we probably need to talk
We
about
have that
that
now.
with the commission. If that's something that we add, I mean, like you wanna add more to your snow removal, I look at Chad, cause it probably falls under park and rec, since it's smaller stuff, maybe it
I
falls under
agree.
street.
Yeah.
Maybe it falls under street, I don't know.
You can dismiss Bob from the meeting now.
Whoever that falls under, you guys can arm wrestle, right? But that's a discussion element there, The other side of it though too is, I don't know that we've been real tough on these contractors when they have damaged them in the past, and maybe we hit them with a firm arm that you damage it, you break it, you buy it. Slow down, and when you're in this area, you can charge accordingly too, probably because of some of that, but I mean, that's part of, you have a downtown business, you want these elements in front of your business, there's a certain extent of cost for maintenance and different things too. But I mean, so those are just different things we can go, but I agree, snow removal is probably, even with the bump outs. We talked to Bob, he's not terribly excited about the bump outs at each corner, right?
Yeah.
But as I've talked to you about it, you said, hey.
They'll
we
let,
want-
they'll take the snow off of it.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Right.
We'll get it.
We'll deal with it, that's the can-do.
We have to
attitude,
change our
which I think is-
schedule, we'll start up down there and whatever we need to do.
I think the city appreciates that can-do attitude, we get it done, so.
How wide is the ADA space between?
8 feet.
So I mean, from that standpoint, no matter what you put out there, they could run a bobcat down that, and then you're just cleaning little bits out to the street from there. So I mean, it's not, I think some people when we talk about putting all this, forget that there's gonna be a big wide path of just clean white concrete still. It's not like we're gonna have benches right up against their building.
Right. And we try, we try not to get, cutesy with the design either, where it's like, okay, so we put the planters right along the edge of that sidewalk. So you come through and you can go right through that area. And then it's just coming back and just, in between, pushing it out. It's not like we're setting this one back 3 feet, then that one's back 2 feet, and then this one's back 1 feet. We try and make it as, streamlined as possible. Helps the snow removal, but also, from a visual, visually impaired standpoint too. That contrasting color of the, the white regular concrete versus the dark colored, kind of what we consider a transition zone, helps from a visual standpoint too, so.
And one more thing, I think we can do some stuff to assist to make that better. In the past, we have only had a few not a large amount of planters downtown, so we don't really do a lot of things with them. But if we know that we have our new product we're talking about, we have a bunch of low planters, maybe as a city we go through and we put markers in them so that the contractor can see those when we got 2 feet of snow, they know where those are at. It would help, because now Red has it, everything that Red does, he has it how he wants to because he's taking it out with a skid loader.
Yeah.
And then we just pour the concrete flat over it instead of replacing the planter, so he's got them all how he wants them now.
Well,
Yeah, you should be, yeah.
the city of Larchwood
Red gets
is,
it timely. Half of our problem is it isn't done timely. Like
Yeah,
you
right.
mentioned, maybe we should take one pass down the, well, when only 60% of the people have their snow pushed to the edge and Chad comes down there, then it's, how often, we have that issue now, Red at least gets out there and he's on it right away.
Yeah.
The next guy, 2 days later, that's good.
and I do know that like the city of Larchwood, for their downtown, they had a business owner come in and like just basically shave off one entire side of the tree because he just didn't like it. And it killed the tree, and they did assess, planting a new one back to him. So, he hasn't cut it back since. So.
So are these business owners gonna have a say in what's in front of their business, if there's a bench, or if there's a planter, if there's a, cause, if I was a business owner, I would like my neighbors to have pretty stuff on theirs, and I'd like mine to be wide open, so.
Yeah.
Well,
we take.
I'm just curious, or are you guys just gonna design it and build it?
We'll take it under advisement.
My understanding.
That's my line.
My understanding with what's out there today, some of the businesses bought the lights, paid for the lights and the planters that are in front of their business, is what I was told. Back then, back in the 70s, they wanted a light in front of their business, and they paid for it, or paid part of it, or whatever, so.
So, thinking more in the summertime,
Right.
do any communities ever run, like a water hydrant out of there for spraying down in front of their building if they would choose to do so?
Like to wash off the sidewalk or something? Absolutely. Oh yeah, we would have, that is, I guess that is probably more typical what we do, which is we just have quick couplers that you can hook up, a hose to, in the landscape areas, periodic locations throughout the streetscape. We would have that as a part of this design as well, but also as a part of this, we're gonna be doing, an irrigation system for each planter. So, so it'll have the watering of the trees, but it'll also have the opportunity to kind of hook up, because then you can hook up and you could water the above ground planters or any of the raised stuff, so you don't have to come down, with a water truck. We'll put those at strategic locations to access those.
And then one final thing, with the new water and sewer lines going through, how is that going to be set up and arranged with, if they're above ground flower beds, as far as having water leaks and so on, and not having to tear up the whole sidewalk area?
I mean,
Is that, or is that just?
I guess the hope would be is that when you come in and replace the water main, typically we replace all the services up to the
Up to the,
curb stop and as far as we can, up to the edge of the building. So that at least we know, the street portion of it is clear, and new. And, but as it comes into the building, that's why we always tell everybody, if you're gonna do a large street project, replace all your utilities underneath it, whether they're, 20 years, 10 years, probably not 10 years, but 20 years or 50 years old. You're best just replacing them so that you don't have to come up and dig up a new street again. So,
has that,
It's a novel concept.
has that
Yeah.
been conveyed, well, and has that been conveyed to the street owner, or the business owners?
I mean, I can't remember from the water.
We are replacing, we've actually been doing that on all of our water main projects, is replacing the service up to the curb stop.
Yeah,
The idea of that is that we have a lot of old water services in town, right? And once we put in the new water main, we try to reconnect that old water service, we end up with a leak right there all the time where we reconnected. So now we gotta go back and we milled and overlaid now, so we got a nice pretty street, we gotta go back and dig a spot and repair it. And I don't know, it was pissing us off. So we stopped, we talked to the commission at that time and the commissioners and stuff. And anyways, we just made the conscious decision that we replace up to the curb stop now, so we're outside of the street and improvements that we've done.
and those curb stops too, we would then put a casting over top of them. So that way it's not just because a lot of times, different community, the old style, I guess, I can't remember the way you use it, but, bringing that curb stop all the way up, that you can see the nut on it, you bring it all the way flush to the pavement, and then that can kind of, all of a sudden they're kind of popping up, so you gotta try and, screw them back down, or they're too low, and so what we'll do is we'll set them, an inch or so low, and then we'll put a casting over top of them. And that casting is then flush with the concrete, so that way it kind of alleviates that issue.
That is also our detail, when a curb stop is set in concrete, it's supposed to be, it's a water valve.
Yep.
Casting is what it is, that goes around the curb stop. They've been doing that, haven't they, on the projects, wherever one ends up in concrete, because like he's talking, that's always a problem, it's frost and whatnot. And it moves, your concrete moves up and down or whatever,
Right.
and that changes, so.
Yep.
And that's kind of where I was going with it too, Brett, was, you get all done with it, and 2 years down the road, now you have leaks underneath, and now you're tearing up a
Yeah.
brand new area, including beautification efforts.
Which becomes very costly, right?
Yeah, well, it's one of those deals, you lay a brand new street down, and next thing you know, within a year or two, they're tearing the damn thing up because there's a water leak or an access point that is having an issue.
Yeah, no, we do have that included. We weren't going past the curb stops at this point, because you gotta stop at some spot.
And I'm not blaming the water and sewer guys out here, I'm just saying.
My back of my head's getting hot,
I don't know
right?
why I hear muttering in the background.
You can make eye contact with you here.
For the record. The guy with the gun left.
David, I got just one more quick thing. Is there a
Yeah.
way that we can come up with an estimate on maintenance per block? I'm thinking I'm looking at the perennial beds, and I'm thinking pre-emergent, how much, in order to keep for weed control. I'm thinking about what kind of mulch you're gonna use. Are we using shredded, are we using bark mulch, are we using rock mulch? If we're using bark mulch, we know, like around Forest Street area, it's a huge wind tunnel. So how often am I gonna have to replace bark,
Yeah.
rejuvenate the bark?
Yeah.
Is there just, I don't know if there's a way we can do that, but that's something that I would like to be able to present to the commission, because it's gonna be an added budget that we aren't spending right now after everything's installed.
Right. we've done that in the past. It's been a while since we've done that, but
Okay.
we can certainly do that. What I would do, what we'll do is, you know, we've got a good working relationship with those that take care of Phillips Avenue downtown.
Mhm.
So I can reach out to City of Sioux Falls and their park staff, because they have that broken up into districts, and so there is one kind of district manager for that area, and I can talk to him about it.
Okay,
So,
just so we're not surprised when I
Right,
have to buy
yeah.
3 pallets of
Yeah.
preen, or, you know, find maybe a
Well-
different pre-emergent product that,
well, and we'll wanna talk through that specific materials with you guys
Okay.
too, you know, as we get into kind of the next steps of the design, you know, do you want wood mulch? Or obviously, you know, with the wind and stuff, would you rather go to a rock mulch? Now, you know, I know with stone, there's always a concern of, you know, people could pick it up and throw it, or break something with it. Recently, we've gone to like more of a 3/4 inch chipped stone, so it doesn't blow away as easily as wood mulch, but it's not as, you know, it's not like it's 2 inch, so you can, you know, pick it up and break a window or something. So maybe that's an option. You know, whether it's, you know, you can utilize fabric, or if you wanna use plastic, you know, for underneath your mulch. So yeah, we can work through some of those fine details to have it something that you guys can easily, you know, maintain, and we can work on getting numbers on that,
okay,
so,
thank you.
yeah, absolutely.
I just was gonna note too, we've talked about it with the commission before, but just kind of in the back of your mind, there's really 2 blocks where the full layout probably applies the best. And then there's like Market Street South, where maybe it's not the full layout, but it ramps up, you know, that's something that obviously will be incorporated by Stockwell and with commission input, I guess, but, so I don't know that you're looking at that cost for all 4 blocks that are there, I guess, I'm seeing. So just, you know, there's a couple blocks that likely could, because there's also from Fifth Street, 4th Street, we have the post office and some of that in there, so you get a little limited in what you can put in front of that too, to get a little tighter region in there, so. Food for thought.
Well, it's good food for thought, but with a 10 to 20% markup indicator for the next 2 years, so I should.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I mean, this is pricing that we've seen recently, so we should probably put a pretty healthy escalator in there for when it gets constructed.
Yeah, price would be way down.
All right, any more questions for David? If not, the show goes on the road at 5:30 at the event center, and you're all welcome to come, because Mr.
Yeah.
Locke will have many more things to tell us.
Wow, I don't know about many more, but I mean.
You have many more questions, I'm sure.
Oh, I'm sure I'll get more questions. So, yeah, no, appreciate the opportunity. I mean, I guess, what did you guys think? I mean, is it something, I mean, you guys, what you expected, not what you expected?
Of course, we'd
Didn't
seen
like
it before, you know,
Yeah.
we've seen, the program before, so.
Yeah.
You know, we were kind of prepared with it, I was, I knew what we were looking at, so.
Okay,
And I'm just looking forward to seeing how it embellishes it, so.
okay.
So the next step will be tonight, and
Mhm.
we'll go. keep
Yep.
going on
And
that.
then
Yep.
what happens from there, then you're gonna have a plan.
Yeah, then we'll move into a lot more detail.
And- But I think it's a good plan, I give you guys a lot of opportunities.
Thank you for the first corner.
Great first step.
Thank you.
I anticipate some input, and this would come in through DOT as well. We've had some interested parties that would like to put a welcoming arch. Regardless of the cost, is that even something that could be considered on a state highway?
We discussed it internally. One of the biggest problems we have is you can't put it anywhere close to a signal or something that's gonna impede those things, so the last thing I saw was we were not gonna allow that.
Plus, I think Brett and I talked about that as well. And it's a novel idea, I get it, but, you know, the physical requirements of, for example, the foundation would have to be huge, because that thing would have to be way up in the air and basically 100 feet wide. You're not talking about something that's on a 60-foot street. I mean, you're talking about a massive structure.
Well, I think I think specifically it said that it could, if there were footings and foundations, that they would not be allowed within the DOT right away. So it'd have to go further out than, so it would have to be at a block, or it would have to be at an intersection, which, because each intersection is signalized, there's no location to put
Logistically,
it.
it just, in engineering wise, you know, when Brett and I talked about it, just didn't make
Yeah.
sense.
Well, and then there's just a group that's pushing for that too. I think, you know, we talked about the costs. I think that will go away, just because I think there was this idea that it wasn't that much more, and we could, you know, if we could just, and when you start talking about the footings and what it would take, you know, when you're talking about the cost you're throwing around for a whole block for just one archway, you know.
At
and
least.
that all of a sudden changes the whole, so, you know, so I think that one will be able to put to bed pretty quick, just because they,
You need to have to purchase lots on on either side of the street, because they can't go at an intersection, because there's signals.
Right.
So we have to find somewhere outside of DOT right away, so we'd have to buy.
Not on my
We'd have-
lawn. That's all
Right,
you
so we'd have to
get.
we'd have to find a lot
Put
on
that
either
big thing
side of the
on my
street
lawn.
across from each other, which would likely be a purchase deal, and
Mhm.
somebody might be willing to sell, but the other side isn't, you know, and.
Mhm. Mhm.
I just.
Yeah, no, I fully
You know,
anticipate
I
that
would-
being
I
a
would be
comment
surprised
tonight.
if we don't hear it again tonight.
Yeah.
we will hear it, but
Yeah.
but I think different than the last time we talked, we have better information
Right.
to
Mhm.
address.
Mhm.
And so many of those archways that were shown in the pictorial we got, we're in Oceanside, California, and places like that, where they don't have ice and crap flying down on the trucks and the cars.
Right, that's also a
Not on my
discussion.
car, I don't want that
Thought about that.
icicle falling on my
Right.
car.
Never thought about that.
I mean, we did the one, we were a part of the one that did the arch over the falls part,
Mhm.
you know, and I forgot to look up the cost, that was a long time ago too, but I mean, I could look at, I could have someone look the cost up for what that arch cost. We've done more recently, the city of Yankton wanted us to look at doing one across Third Street, which is adjacent to the highway that runs north-south, coming into their downtown. And it just came down to, from a cost standpoint, I mean, I think I want to say it was $1 million
Wouldn't surprise me.
plus.
Yeah.
And the city just was like, why, I mean, same discussion, in terms of the greater good of community dollars, why would we spend $1 million on one element that's within a 10-foot area of one street? And so that's kind of just been the discussions that we've been a part of. And there's also the concern of the ice, you know, of what happens with that snow when it falls off of it.
You know, and so we addressed a few of the things that we know will come up. We addressed the snow removal, we addressed that. The other one that has, as long as any of us have ever talked about downtown, the trees thing has come up, and that's gonna come up again. Do we have a better answer? I mean, I know you kind of had said you'll be sensitive to where we put them, but if we
Mhm.
wanna do uplighting and we wanna have trees, you know, I remember being a part of the chamber when it was like, we'll never put trees downtown again because the bird crap, and I'm not having one in front of my, when we had it, it was the worst thing in the world, it ruined everything, so, you know, how do we know how we're gonna address that? Cause we know that one's gonna come up too.
Well, I mean, you're still gonna have birds, I mean, so, you know, some of those same arguments, you know, if that's your approach or your perspective, that isn't changed. But, I mean, I'd say in general, the public perception of street trees and, you know, the benefits of street trees, whether it's shade or the heat island effect, reducing some of the harshness of the urban environment, you know, I think there's a lot you know, a better public opinion in terms of planting trees in the downtown area and a bigger push to do that. So I have to say from a public perception standpoint, people are more receptive to it nowadays. Having said that, I mean, you're gonna have leaves, they're going to fall, you're gonna have to pick them up, they may get tracked into the business. You know, yeah, you'll have birds associated with it. You know, but I also, you know, my argument to that is when you think of a quintessential small town downtown, or a downtown that you wanna spend a lot of time in, a lot of times they'll bring something up and it's lined with street trees, you know? So, you know, those environments are more, you know, pedestrian friendly and inviting. And so to me, you know, and there's a lot of data, and I could try and look some of that stuff up in terms of, you know, types of environments, you know, that people wanna be in. And, you know, you gotta have shade, you gotta have, you know, place for someone to sit. And if you don't have those things, you're not inviting someone to spend time and spend dollars in your downtown area. So.
Plus it's Arbor Week.
Right, yeah. Are you guys a Tree City USA?
Even made the presentation.
See?
I did.
See?
Got in the paper
40 years.
40 years running.
Yeah, so Tree City USA, and you're not gonna put trees in the heart of your community.
David, do we have a more columnar variety picked out that you could maybe express to those downtown businesses that are worried about their
Yeah.
their
Oh, yeah.
front canopy, the tree growing into it, where we can
Yep.
explain to them that
Yep.
we're not gonna maybe necessarily put the same variety that we have from 5th to 9th in those planters.
Correct.
For the you know,
Correct.
we're gonna create more of a columnar,
Yep.
not quite the canopy
Yep.
in the
Yep.
downtown area, so it shouldn't be as much of an issue in front of their building,
Yep.
maybe as what it was in the past. I don't know
Yep.
what variety we had planted before, you know, downtown, but all those are gone now,
I
so.
was gonna say, I don't even remember there being trees downtown. But I will say, you know, like what we've done in the past, you know, like there's some good, I mean, so the general 4 trees that we showed, like honey locust has some good kind of more narrower canopy trees. And the honey locusts that are nice because those leaves, you know, are small, so they kind of, you know, disappear as opposed to, you know, an oak, you know, where they kind of, you know, the larger leaf. Same with like the elm, you know, you can get one that has more of an upright branching structure to it. But we could do, you know, like, we've done columnar, God, what is the name of it now? It is a type of oak, but it's a columnar variety.
There's a new columnar oak that I planted 2 of them up at the dog park.
Okay,
with
yeah.
a grant,
Yep,
and they get a really nice red fall color to
Yep.
them that I think we should consider
yep,
as part of our package
Right.
downtown.
yeah.
And I can't remember the name of it, crimson red, I think, or something
That
like
was,
that.
yep. And, you know, there's also, you know, you can get columnar, you know, like a columnar ginkgo tree. I mean, we didn't have ginkgo in there, but we could utilize ginkgo, as a tree as well. Even the normal varieties, it grows so slow that it won't infringe on the building in my kid's lifetime, so.
I think that'd be a good way to present to the
Yeah.
people that are concerned about that.
Yep.
All right, we good to go? Thanks, David, appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.